States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On March 29th, 2025, Governor Maura Healey signed into law bodies to the H-62 as amended by S-2506, which contained the final form of the bill entitled An Act to Extending Certain COVID-19 Measures Adopted During the State of Emergency Act. Of interest to all government bodies in Massachusetts, the act extends until 2027 the authority for meetings of multiple member bodies to be held in an entirely remote or hybrid format. All public bodies may hold fully remote or hybrid meetings without the physical presence of a quorum of the public body as long as the adequate alternative means of public access is also provided. Notice is hereby given in accordance with Chapters 20 of the Acts of 2009, Section 17 through 20 of the Massachusetts General Laws that a regular meeting of the Holyoke School Committee will be held today, May 12, 2025, with a recording on the city's Community Access TV channel and being live streamed. Ms. Wilson.
I noticed that it was different than what was posted, what you just read aloud. Are we going to be shifting our statement that we make on our agendas?
I read what was on the agenda.
You did? Okay. Thank you.
We do have the absence of a vice chair this evening, so we do need to elect a vice chair pro tem. Each member will state their choice for that, and the roll call tonight is starting with Mr. Izaza. Ms. Feliciano.
I nominate Mr. Sheehan.
Mr. Sheehan.
Devin Sheehan.
Devin Sheehan.
Devin Sheehan.
Mayor Garcia.
Devin Sheehan.
I think something's wrong with his. We can't hear him.
Can you hear me? Test.
I can hear you in Zoom, but they can't hear us in the room.
1 second, Mayor. I know you can hear us, but we can't hear you. Oh.
How though? How did it get turned down?
Try again, Mayor.
If it's not being used, how did it get turned down?
Devin Sheehan.
Okay. Dr. Rivera Colon.
Devin Sheehan.
And Mr. Sheehan.
Devin Sheehan.
Oh, and Ms. Tennessee Williams, excuse me.
I nominate Devin Sheehan.
We do have our student showcase up first, and we have some students from Kelly School that I think are here.
Yeah, Mr. Mogel's gonna go out in the hallway. So today, from what I understand, we're gonna be hearing from some of our 5th grade students at Kelly and their choir program. So a lot of musically themed.
Waiting on the music. Okay. We'll come back. Ms. Feliciano, is there any public comment?
No.
Okay. Moving on to student reports.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Rodriguez, the Holyoke High School Committee representative. About 150 students in AP classes had their exams this week and last week, and their scores will be reported in July. On Saturday, students from Holyoke High and Dean, who earned the Seal of Biliteracy, were honored at a ceremony at UMass. It was very nice. A team of 7 staff and 2 students went to Tucson, Arizona to observe the innovative educational practices of Sunnyside School District. Learning focused on student agency, and the team is excited to bring back their findings to the North Campus. Steven Santiago, a member of our wrestling team, was honored by the Surprise Squad and Western Mass News. He earned 100 match wins this season, and he was honored by the whole school at our student versus staff volleyball game during our reach block. And some good news for the students, they won the volleyball game. Sophomores in the Engineering and Life Sciences Academy took part in Holyoke Medical Center's interactive stroke awareness and education event. Students learned how to identify and respond to signs of a stroke and learned about medical careers from a group of first responders and medical professionals. The Community and Global Studies students toured Holyoke's green infrastructure as part of an urban ecology field trip in partnership with the Holyoke Department of Conservation and Sustainability. And finally, seniors will be presenting their capstone presentations as part of our annual capstone competition. This will be the first year students from all 3 high school academies participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. We're good? Okay, now we have our student showcase.
We're nice people. Don't be afraid, okay?
You actually hit my phone. You actually hit my phone, actually.
All right. Because they're all going to be jealous.
Yeah, I need it. Me too, I love it. Me too. Now we can. Forever young first? Oh. Right here, exactly. Hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Are you gonna drop the beat or not? Let us die young, let us live forever. We don't have the power, but we never say never. Sitting in a sand pit, life is a short trip. The music spreads the sad man. Can you imagine when this race is won? When our little faces into the sun. Rising our leaders, we're getting in tune. Madman, forever young. I want to be forever young. Do you really want to live forever, and forever, and ever? some rest, 'cause I've been out here working all the days. Blueberries and butterflies, the pretty things that greet my eyes. I'm on my way. You and me belong together like cold iced tea and warm weather. We lay underneath the pines and we still have fun when the sun will shine. You and me belong together all the time. Feeling food and homemade drinks. Throw cheers to the words you sing. Screaming, it's so good to be alive. We know that we don't got much, but then again it's just enough to always find a way for a good time. You and me belong together like cold iced tea and warm weather. Where we lay underneath the pines and we still have fun when the sun will shine. You and me belong together. This love is all we need. We got so much. You and me, oh, you and me belong together like cold iced tea and warmer weather. We lay out underneath the pines and we still have fun when the sun will shine. You and me belong together all the time. It goes on and on and on. It goes on and on and on. It goes on and on and on.
And I don't know if Mr. Morris or their teacher wants to say anything, if you want to introduce the group and the teacher, or
Hi everyone. You just heard the
can you
Kelly
can you
School-
actually speak into the, make sure it's on and, yeah, okay.
It's on.
Thank you.
You just heard the Kelly School 5th grade choir. They are currently rehearsing for their step up day, and these are two of the songs that they will be singing.
Wonderful.
So I hope you enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
And how long has the choir been in existence at Kelly School?
We started this group last year.
Okay.
We have been rehearsing since February.
Wonderful,
year, so.
wonderful. And so I'm so happy that music choirs are back. I sang in choir all the way from middle school. I don't think we had one in elementary school, but middle school through high school. And it's a really wonderful to hear all of your voices. It brings me back to when I was in choir at your right around your age. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Ms. Tensley Williams?
Thank you, guys. I think they're getting ready to leave, so.
Mr. Morris, can you stay maybe with the teacher because we still have some questions or statements we'd like to make?
Sorry. Yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
You guys did a good job, and I like what you said, do you want to live forever? Now, I'm not sure about wanting to live forever, but I love butterflies, and you said like butterflies on blueberries. I love it. It was very nice, and come again, okay? We love you.
Thank you. We
You're
will.
welcome, sweetheart.
Anything else?
I think we're good. Thank you, Principal
Thank you
Morris.
so
guys.
much. Thanks to all the parents and family members who came to watch their children and guardians and nieces or nephews or just friends. We appreciate you.
So we are going to be moving on to our FY26 budget presentation. But before we begin this, let's pull it up. As you note from the presentation that you received, this is a quite lengthy document. So I am asking that if members have questions regarding this, that they write them down, and periodically through the presentation, we'll pause, we'll take questions on the slides that we saw, then we'll move on. Once we take the questions on the slides we saw, we're going to move on from those slides to new questions on new slides. So let's focus on the slides when we chunk them out, and then we'll move along that way. And Mr. Soto has assured me that we're not reviewing all 80 slides.
I did.
Only 79.
So I have Sean with me, and in the spirit of holding true to my promise, we're going to skip over the first 4 slides because you all know that our strategic priorities, our mission, our vision, and the point in presenting those ahead of this budget is that we really believe that the investments that we're making in this budget and throughout the budget development process, it was guided through our strategic priorities and our strategic plan. So I'm going to go right to slide 6. I first just want to make
before you start, I think it's important just to note, and you can just introduce the members of your senior leadership team that are here, because it's not often that we get some of them here, and we appreciate the time that you're coming after the normal workday to come out here to the meeting in person, and thank you for doing that. So if you just want to introduce the members that are
Absolutely.
here, along with Mr. Mangano.
Thank you, Devin. That was really rude of me. I'm just feeling a lot of pressure to get through this quickly. So yeah, I brought the majority of our team here just in case we get into some questions about their budgets. They are the experts in their budgets. I have Jackie Gasheen, current Edsel, newly appointed assistant superintendent. I have Jenny Malave, our executive director of technology and data. I have Rebecca Thompson, our executive director of academics. I have Marianne Courier, our chief of pupil services. Beth Gage, chief of human resources, and Stephen Mogel, who is our executive director of DEI, family and community engagement, and language access. So I just wanted to start with showing some deep appreciation to the finance subcommittee. I know Jay's not here, but he's been really steady in meeting with Sean and the team and everybody that is on that finance subcommittee. They've been kind of coming along through this budget development journey throughout the process. And I also want to thank the budget advisory committee that we had formed to provide us with some recommendations on, some challenges that we may have in the budget. And I'm going to skip over right to slide 8 and talk about some of the strategic investments. First and foremost, and I know Mr. Wellahan has mentioned many a times, this budget, we don't have any layoffs that we're looking at or severe cuts to programming or anything like that. We were really intentional in how we used our ESSER funding and really intentional about how we're going to accelerate the priorities that are identified in our Student Opportunity Act. And we have one more year of Student Opportunity Act increases before we start seeing more relatively flat revenues. But, we're really thoughtful in how we use that funding so that we're avoiding, increasing class sizes and layoffs like what you're seeing in other communities. In this budget, we've earmarked some funds for the new collective bargaining agreement that we're engaged in with teachers, and we've funded the increase to therapists based on the collective bargaining agreement as well. You can see here we have a staffing allocation. Principals are able to pretty much predict what their teaching allocations are going to be based on their enrollment. We try to stay within the target class sizes here. I do believe there's a typo there, Sean, in the middle school one, right? Because I believe it goes up to 26.
Yeah, so these aren't our guidelines. These are when we look at the enrollment that we projected. What we're seeing is average class sizes for next year. Now, okay. Attendance will impact it, but the point is that we're well within those guidelines. So middle school goes up to 28 students, but right now, based on our current enrollment, we're seeing it between 15 and 22.
Perfect. We were able to fund art, music, and PE in every school. I know how important that was of a priority over the last few years, making sure that we do have and continue to fund art, music, and PE teachers across the district. One thing we did differently this year is there's a large portion, there's a portion of our budget that is based on student enrollment and the staff allocation. And then there's another portion of the budget where it's principal discretionary funds. And we have, that's been relatively flat over the years. This year, we actually increased it by 5.5%. So principals had a little bit more funding available to them to be able to think about how they're going to use that relative to their own school. We continue to fund high quality tier 1, 2, and 3 programming to make sure we're meeting student needs, both academically, behaviorally, and socially, emotionally. And we also continue to invest in making sure we have strong math and English coaching at every school. We didn't touch those allocations. Many of you have seen the retention work group and seen some of the data. Many of our teachers are in their first 3 year, and we think it's so important to continue to build the momentum that we have in developing our teachers and making sure that they, that they have the tools and the professional learning necessary to execute high quality instruction at grade level, and that they're supported by these coaches. And we also continue to invest in math and ELA intervention teachers as well, which was another new investment that we made using ESSER, and we were able to sustain that in this upcoming budget year. Next slide, please. We continue to invest in social, emotional, and behavioral supports. One of the things that's funded in here that we had a few discussions with the school committee is the new program that we would be under the Opportunity Academy umbrella to support some 9th and 10th graders in the upcoming school year. And that program, we intend on it being located at Metcalf. We've had a mentoring program. I have plenty. I myself am a mentor, and I know many of our cabinet members are mentors, and we have others that are mentoring middle school students, and we're investing to strengthen that. We've been at it for a couple of years, and we want to make sure that that's something that we just build into our normal practice, and that the mentees, the mentors, have the tools that they need to be effective mentors. And we're also considering, we've funded in this budget, we have restorative justice practices and conflict resolution that's led, peer-led at the students. We want to extend that to the middle schools. One thing that we saw this year was a lot of our peers at the high school are graduating out, and we probably should have done a better job at making sure that we have enough freshmen and sophomores interested in participating in Roots. So we want to just start that at the middle school level and get students interested in becoming members of Roots when they get to the high school, but starting to support a strong culture in the school that is supported by many of our middle school students. And we continue to invest in our guidance and adjustment counselors, which we had increased over the years through the use of ESSER funds. This is the first year where you saw an increase in the amount of funding we give to the city for admin costs. That was our commitment many years ago when we were talking about building a brand new middle school. One of the things that we committed to was to make sure that we come up with a way to fund $500,000 towards that bond payment, and the way we did it was through our admin agreement with the city. So there's an increase there. One thing that's new this upcoming year, and I wouldn't want to say that it's necessarily it's new to the budget for sure. So we have 2 resource officers, 1 at each high school, and that's what we've paid for traditionally. And they have a supervisor that supervises them and has supported throughout the process. One thing that we worked on with the current chief is to actually fund that third resource officer that's currently supervising, but to ensure that that person's on site all the time, not just floating around and doing other things, but where that person is there when needed. And the thought behind that is that we got two big middle schools now. We will next year. So we have Sullivan and we have Peck. So we're trying to figure out a way, with those three resource officers, how could we create an environment where there's enough where there's always a resource officer available. They've been very available. I mean, sometimes we call the resource officer at Dean when we need support at another school, and the same thing with with our the supervisor. So we're just codifying it, and I had some good conversations with the chief that we'd like to see more of a presence in the middle school. So in order to do that, we included that in our budget. Next slide. And other strategic investments is continuing to invest in the professional development opportunities throughout the year and stipends for mentor teachers. Right now, we have 100% of our new teachers have an assigned mentor, and they meet with that mentor or have met with that mentor throughout the year once a week. And I'm sure they've met outside of that, dedicated time as well, helping support being a new teacher in Holyoke and getting, professional development can be a lot, especially as a new teacher. So those mentors have always made themselves available to help make sure that when you come to Holyoke and your first year teaching, you get all the support that you need in addition to other supports. We didn't touch our special ed inclusion teacher ratio or anything like that. So we maintain those, as well as our English language development teacher. And we've seen a lot of growth with, particularly with our ELL population. We've actually exited about 56 students this year so far, and we know that more are to come once we go through the process of alt access testing. I know that this was something that was very near and dear to the school committee's heart. Continuing to invest in family and community engagement. And, over the last couple of years, we've made sure that there is a family engagement coordinator at every school. And we continued that investment for next year. They have been critical in supporting our attendance efforts, not just at the district level, but at the school level with their attendance, being a part of the attendance team meetings that happen and being a part of the district attendance task force as well that meets once a month. And we continue to fund teacher development and recruitment and, of course, preschool. As far as extended learning goes, much of the funding that we have for extended learning comes off of Title I and our 21st Century program, but there is a portion of it that comes out of the general fund. This year in particular, we had to, because I think $155,000 was funded on ESSER money, and that funding is gone. You'll see an increase on the general fund because we want to make sure that we continue to invest in summer school and after school programs and the enrichment that Kelly is and vacation academies as well. And this is where I'm going to...
Are there any questions on strategic investments? Mrs. Wilson?
Thank you. First of all, I'm excited that there's intervention in both math and ELA in every school. For a while, there was only ELA. So I think it's important that we have it in both core areas. For adjustment counselors, I'm wondering, are our schools staffed to just manage emergency situations, or are they staffed so that school adjustment counselors can have a caseload and consistently be able to work with students, not just be scheduled and then have to be pulled due to the daily events at school?
Yeah, our adjustment counselors do have a caseload, and you know, they do support with ongoing support that is needed. But we, you know, one of the things that we did, I want to say last year, we increased the allocations so that there is enough. I can't say that, you know, we could always use more support when it comes to that, but there's definitely, you know, between the counseling teams at every school, you know, they divvy up who actually is managing the caseload and who's supporting on the floor.
Any other questions? Mr. Izaza?
I just have a couple of comments. I applaud the kind of emphasis on socio-emotional skills and early literacy. I know how crucial they are for actual success over time. And I have a question about the family and community engagement as to whether there is any kind of connection between the kind of the work of that particular group and the development of those types of skills in the community. I think the socio-emotional skills are so important at the family level. And I wonder if there is any connection at all being made or potentially being made. I just think that connection between family engagement and socio-emotional skills in the family is quite crucial.
Yeah, I think so. A good portion of the family engagement team is attendance, community events, and then whatever support is needed. But I want to stress the importance that family engagement is not just solely rest on the family engagement coordinators. It rests on a lot of people in the building, our teachers, our administrators, our front office staff. You know, oftentimes there is, you know, one of the things that we, you know, we want to roll out effectively throughout the district next year is students having that one person that they can go to in the building, and students that need a check-in and check-out. Sometimes that connection is going to be with that person. It could be a teacher. It could be somebody on the student support team. It's not always going to be your family engagement coordinator, but they definitely, you know, they're definitely in it and try to support all of our family engagement efforts throughout. But it doesn't rest solely on their shoulders.
Ms. Tensley Williams?
Mr. Soto, you said the new teachers that come in, they're being mentored. Could you give me a couple examples?
Yeah, so every single new teacher, first year teacher in Holyoke is assigned a mentor. We post a position, and other teachers in the district have the opportunity to receive a stipend to support that. And we've built into the schedule that one day a week, the teachers are working with their mentors. And in the first couple of months of school, that support might just be, you know, what are the systems and structures in place in Holyoke? Like, how do you do your time? We try to fit a lot into that new teacher induction program. Our human resource department goes there and tries to get, you know, all the questions answered that teachers have. But you know, once you leave that, and you know, we want to make sure that teachers have the support that they need. And then as the year progresses, the support that may be provided by the mentors looks a little different. So if, as a district, we're working on the use of exemplars or, you know, planning and data meetings around priority standards, that mentor, if a new teacher needs support with that, they might be providing some extra support in that. But it looks different throughout the year. And I got to say, this is our first year implementing it. There's been a lot, there's definitely a lot that we can tweak and adjust to make sure that that's a rich relationship and that the work that they're focusing on is the right work.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions regarding this section? Oh, Soto.
Okay for me to take over? All right.
Yes.
So for the sake of time, I'm only going to touch on the highlights of the upcoming slides. I'm not going to cover every bullet on the slides, but if you have questions on any of them, obviously when we get to the end of that section, I'll ask for questions and you can ask about anything. But we still have 66 more slides. So balancing the budget on the revenue side. So not much has changed here. Our transportation projection that we put into the budget early, we were hoping it was a conservative estimate and we'd be able to bring it down, and that we would identify some cost-saving strategies to be able to do that. We have identified those cost-saving strategies or some ways to reduce costs, but since we built that projection, we've seen increases in routes that have pushed the number even higher. So we're using those strategies just to get back to the figure that we first put in. So we've kept that transportation figure flat from the initial projection to now. One new element is the inclusion of carry forward funding to help balance the budget. We did this in FY25. We used $3 million of carry forward funding to help close the gap, and we're proposing for FY26 using $2 million. And this is based on our most current projections of where we're going to end this current fiscal year and what we would have to roll over. You've seen this chart probably a gazillion times. Oh, sorry, I'm flipping the wrong one. You've seen this chart a gazillion times, which shows the sort of impacts of Student Opportunity Act on the Holyoke Public Schools. You can see where, so what you see here are bars that show the net school spending requirement for the Holyoke Public Schools. The larger portion of those bars is what we get in Chapter 70, and the smaller portion is the local contribution requirement. This isn't our total budget because this is just net school spending, so it doesn't include transportation, but it's the majority of our budget. And you can see where Student Opportunity Act went into effect around FY22, and we started getting the phase in over 6 years. We anticipate that running through FY27, and then we'll see our local increases and our state-funded increases start to flatten out in FY28. On the expense side, most of the new money in this budget is going into salaries to maintain collective bargaining agreements or for anticipated collective bargaining agreements, as the superintendent mentioned. We are setting aside $1.2 million of school choice funding to support the program as well. I think we did about $1 million in FY25, so it's a little bit of an increase, but we have the funding in our school choice revolving fund to support that. And on the supplies and services side, the majority of this increase is related to a couple of grants going away, or at least when we developed this budget, we were in the final year of those grants. Now we're pursuing them, and we're hopeful that we'll get them for another year, but we were in the final year. So one of them is turnaround. We had a $750,000 turnaround grant for FY25. We weren't sure if that was going to continue post-receivership. And then the other one is bar funding. We had a bar grant at the high school. We were in the final year of a 3-year commitment. We're in conversations with bar around renewing it, but those are sort of two big pieces on the supply side where we've had to shift some expenditures from grants to the general fund. Mostly curriculum is from the turnaround grant is what we funded that we've shifted to the general fund. And you'll see that when we get to the academics budget, that'll explain the majority of the increase there. Out-of-district tuition is going up about $687,000. This is lower than when we last presented this to you, and that's because this is where we apply the carry-forward funding. So this has come down about $2 million from when we last presented this because that portion of funding has shifted over to carry-forward projected for next year. And then we're going to talk about how we fund out-of-district tuition. We fund it from about 4 different revenue sources. There's a slide that kind of shows how that puzzle comes together to build the out-of-district budget. So I'll explain what revenue sources are going up and which ones are going down. That gets us to that increase. That comes up in a few slides. Transportation costs, again, continuing to go up what we projected, about 10.3%. This is funded by the city. This was one of the major topics of the budget advisory group's work and figuring out how we handle this challenge going forward. The reason for this increase, just as a reminder, is we have to fund charter transportation. That's an assessment that comes to us. We have about 5% rate increases in our two major transportation providers for van transportation and for bus transportation. And then we've seen an increase in routes for special education students out of district. We've seen rate increases and some route increases for McKinney-Vento. And we've seen an increase in foster routes as well. So we are exploring a number of strategies to try to reduce these costs. The obvious one is we're looking for just efficiencies wherever we can find them. For next year, with the consolidation of Metcalf and STEM into PEC, that will produce some natural efficiencies that will help find some savings. Just having one school instead of two, you can have a better economy of scale in building those routes. We are evaluating other opportunities to convert possibly van routes into minibuses. We did that in FY25 where we had 8 vans going to a couple different out-of-district schools that were located very close together. We converted those to a few minibuses, and that saved somewhere between 150,000 and 200,000. We have hired a consultant to look at our transportation system and recommend best practices and look and see if there's any efficiencies that we are not seeing. We're looking every month. We review our invoices very closely. We work with our providers to see what we can do to have a more efficient system, but we have brought in some outside expertise as well to have an independent look at that. We'll have a report at the end of the month, and we'll certainly share that with all of you. One thing we have been talking about is possibly piloting some in-house routes where we would do a few routes. This is a big shift if we were to do it, but there are a few low-hanging fruit type routes where we spend a lot. And if we were to have the flexibility to do it ourselves, we could save quite a bit of money in just a small number of routes. So it's something that we would have to make a decision on soon if we're going to do it for the fall. But we could do it, again, if we start small, there's some big savings we could have right away. And then all of this sort of falls under the superintendent's recommendation to create a transportation task force. So it would be a group that would include some school committee representation, some city council representation, and others to look at some of these strategies and look at the report that we're going to get from the consultant and anything else. Work with some of our professional organizations like the Mass Association of Pupil Transportation and some other groups, and see what we can do to lower these costs.
Yeah, and I've had conversations with the mayor, and what's being recommended from the budget advisory group is to take a look at every possible scenario around saving money in transportation. So there, one of the things that I'm looking to do is there are some changes that we can make that are that may be controversial in nature, but I want to get ahead of those issues now and not sit here in September and hear from some of the issues that those changes may impact. So I'm definitely looking forward to have this work group take a look at some of those so that we're making an informed decision for next year and know what those touch points are, what those sticky situations are, all in alignment with our policy, but we want to make sure that we just get ahead of that and up front instead of wait until September or October.
We're doing all questions between each section just to.
Yeah, I've got a couple more slides and then I'll turn it over for questions. So this is just some things that we've done previously to reduce costs. So all that brings us to the gap. When we last presented the budget to you, we had a gap of about $1.5 million, and that didn't include any new initiatives, and it didn't include expenditures coming off of grants that were expiring, like Turnaround or BAR. And it also didn't include some additional positions that came out of school budget hearings. We were sort of in the middle of school budget hearings, and so when we do that, we look at the numbers with principals. We look at certain allocations of staffing where the enrollment, might warrant an increase, it might not. And inevitably, there's some increased staffing that comes out of those school budget hearings to make sure that we're staffed appropriately at each school. Counselor is a good example. There was a discussion around counseling where we ended up adding an extra counselor back in to the school allocations based on those conversations. So some of those additional positions also impacted the gap. So that increased it, and then ultimately what we did to close the gap to where it is today is allocate the $2 million of carry forward, and then a combination of $1.5 million in cabinet level budget reductions or cost avoidance type things, like a grant going away, not continuing those expenditures anymore for certain activities that were funded on the grant, and then some of it's just efficiencies that I'm going to highlight some of those on the next slide. And then after this section, we'll turn over for questions. So I'm just going to go over some of the larger reductions that we've built in for next year. In academics, we are removing about $173,000 related to an assessment software. This was a nice efficiency. We actually eliminated it for FY25, but we kept the money in because we needed funds to use some existing software that we have to build out some of these assessments. And we used that money in FY25 to build those assessments. And now we have them and we own them and we don't have to pay for them anymore. and we can eliminate this recurring cost. So by doing that, we can eliminate a recurring cost of about 170,000 through that sort of one-time transition year. In the assistant superintendent's budget, there is a proposed reduction of an executive director of school leadership. So we currently have 2. This would bring us down to 1. There are also 3 district-wide behavior support positions that sort of float between schools and throughout the district. These were funded on a grant, so we're proposing to eliminate those positions. Those folks would go into the schools into either teaching positions or other professional staff positions in the schools. In language access, this is another really positive one where in FY25 we added a 5th translator to our language access team, and we knew there was going to be some reduction in our need for contracted service vendors and what we would have to basically contract out. We didn't realize it was going to be such a large savings. So our language access coordinator proposed this reduction based on what her team can handle versus what needs to be contracted out. And so we're going to provide the same level of service just for $120,000 less because of the addition of that position. In nursing, we're planning to go down 1 registered nurse based on an assessment of the nursing needs across the district. In operations, we had 2 managerial positions. We had a director of facilities and maintenance, and we had a maintenance administrator. The maintenance administrator focused more on capital projects and facility projects. Due to a staff transition, we have an opportunity to merge those 2 positions into 1, and that's what we're proposing for next year. In the superintendent's budget, because we're exiting receivership, we no longer have to fund a receivership contract. We can fund a salaried superintendent position, which is less expensive. In pupil services, we're proposing the elimination of a occupational therapy assistant, which is currently vacant, and the demand for the services are not there to support that position staying. In technology, because we used ESSER to replenish all of our devices, both student and staff devices, for this year, we really don't have a need for ongoing computer replacements to this scale. There'll be some smaller ongoing computer replacements, but this was for sort of a full phased replacement. This might come back in a couple years where we might have to slowly start to phase this back in when our current devices reach the end of their life, but that'll probably be FY28 in that range. And we're going to bring it back in thoughtfully. It won't all come back all at once. In strategy and turnaround, we're proposing a 0.15 FTE reduction to the chief of strategy and turnaround. She oversees a few different departments, so the reduction there would be spread across a few different departments, but that would be a reduction to a cabinet position. In cabinet and directors, the baseline increase that was being proposed was a 3% increase to non-bargaining staff. The superintendent capped that at 1.5% for cabinet leaders and directors. So by capping it at a lower rate, that reduced 60,000 out of our original level services projection. And then all the other cabinet departments, we have a long list of smaller reductions, but they all total up to about 339,000. So I will stop there and see if there's any questions.
So are you not covering the rest of the slides?
No, I'm going to cover.
Okay, cover those
only,
until
unless you
we
tell me
get-
not to. But
Nope.
this was my stopping point.
Nope, cover those until we get to the next on the agenda with the budget assumptions. So
Okay, you want to keep
We're
going?
gonna-
All right. So you've seen this chart on the revenue side. This has not changed. One key I just want to point out is that we built this budget based on the governor's budget. It changes throughout the process. It will change between the House and the Senate and what's voted, and then actuals next year will be different from what was voted. So every fall we do a true up with our budget with the city to get basically the numbers to align with whatever the final budget was that was voted. I wanted to point this out because I believe the mayor's budget is going to be based on the Senate's version of the budget. And so between now and when this comes back to you, we may have to make an adjustment to make sure this aligns with what the mayor's proposing. It doesn't impact our total net school spending target, but it does impact, well, it could. So the biggest difference is that between the governor's budget and the Senate's budget is that the estimate around charter tuition reimbursement dropped pretty significantly. That reduces our net school spending target. So there is an impact. And I have a sheet I'll share with you before you leave that kind of walks through the comparison between our budget and the Senate budget and what that impact would be. So that might be something that changes after we talk with the mayor. On the expenditure side, the primary change from what you've seen previously is that out-of-district tuition line. So again, that came down $2 million because we implemented the carry forward funding that comes out of the regular general fund budget. And so that brought it down to a 12.2% increase. The other changes are related to those reductions that we just talked about, or the new initiatives, like the Opportunity Academy expansion and things like that are reflected in the numbers now. These are just some additional summaries, different ways to look at the same information that I presented to you.
Yeah, I think this one is important in that when we actually go to city council, they solely look at our school department appropriation, and in our budget, and I explain this every year, I just want to remind everybody, in our budget as we're presenting the numbers, we include some lines. The majority of it is really fringe benefits. So included in the numbers that we share is fringe benefits and transportation and other things. And what we try to articulate here is that the total number that we see in our budget book includes some items that the city might have in another budget, because they budget for benefits in a completely separate section. But I think it's important for everybody in the community to know how much of those fringe benefits actually are attributable to the schools and included in that school spending.
Yeah, so it's the two lines at the bottom. It's insurance and benefits. So it's primarily health insurance, but it also includes Medicare, life insurance, dental insurance, and the retirement line, which is our pension assessment, are the two that are budgeted not within the school function on the city side. And this is sort of how the city budget takes our information, what it'll look like. So that's why this number is lower, because it doesn't include the health insurance, it doesn't include the pension. They break our operating budget into personnel, services, and expenses, and then the assessments on the cherry sheet from the state separately. And I'll stop there.
I saw Mr. Wellahan had his hand up first.
First, thank you. Sorry that I was late. Just want to thank John for his hard work, and thank Mr. Soto and his team for their efforts in presenting the budget. I think it's a fair budget. Other towns are having a lot of worst case scenarios in terms of layoffs and budget deficits. So I think Holyoke has done a great job with their finances. Just want to go back to the transportation issue. It keeps coming up. I know we discussed this in Finance Committee. Every meeting, it seems, just trying to get ahead of the curve on that. I know the budget committee that Mr. Soto put together, we've talked about just trying to kind of rein in those costs. I know he kind of said tonight that the numbers even went up, which was sort of a little disheartening. So again, having hiring a consultant to come in to review our practices, that's going to be important. And I know the city council is they're vested in this process too, because the money's going to be coming from their budget. So again, it's something that we're addressing. Other cities are trying to get ahead of the curve too. I know we've talked about having running our own buses or vans. I mean, I know Mr. Collmore has been promoting converting our fleet to electric buses. So we've been talking about that. So again, even though the number has been going up, we're trying to get ahead of the curve and looking for ways to solve the issue. Okay, if we ever go back to $4 a gallon in gas, it's going to be worse. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Wilson?
So I have a couple questions. First, on the in-house transportation pilot, what type of vehicles and who is going to be driving?
So we would have to likely lease some type of school transportation vehicle, a 7D certified vehicle. So it'd be similar to a van. and we would have to hire a driver. Or multiple drivers, but it would be, those costs are costs that are currently in our transportation budget, so we would be using funds set aside for those vans to make those upfront costs. So there's not a request for additional funding. It's in the transportation budget now.
Yeah, we have to, there has to be a whole cost analysis to this, because when you own your own fleet, if your transmission goes, you have to replace the transmission. So when you have your own fleet, you got to pay for gas. So we got to start with a whole analysis on what this would cost. But Sean's pretty confident that, with starting small, we'd be able to eliminate some vans, more vans than we would actually be paying for and maintaining.
And my second question is around the 3.0 behaviorist positions that are being eliminated. I'd like to understand the rationale behind this, removal of these positions. I think, in my mind, I need to better understand this to support this decision based upon our students' social emotional needs are just ever increasing. I don't think our population has changed drastically, so I'm trying to understand why are we eliminating these positions?
Yeah, we had a dean. One of them is a dean on special assignment. And the thought behind that was this dean was going to kind of float around to take a look at, school cultures and systems that they have in place. This was prior to us doing all the work that we did around MTSS. And I think that because we did all of that work, that dean on special assignment is no longer needed. We can slide them into an existing role. So, and I just want to name
So that's one.
That's one, right? And then the other two are behavior interventionists that would do similar. They would serve a similar role. Like if they're needed to support at Lawrence, we would send them to Lawrence. If they're needed to support at another school, they would support at that other school. What we've seen with these staffing shortages is that those positions never last. They were doing that work for a couple months, and then they ended up filling existing roles, not filling existing roles in the school, but we've permanently placed them in the schools that we felt they needed the most support. And in that work, we're confident that with our director of SEL and with the work that we invested in MTSS and the EDSL and all the support positions that we have, we'd be able to support the schools in the same way. There's some things that we need to consider in that one of these positions was providing restraint training across the district, right? So we need to work through how we're going to continue to deliver that professional learning, but it'll be outside of the school day. It won't be, it won't be part of somebody's full-time job. We'd probably stipend that work out.
I don't feel that's sufficient. I feel as though I need to have data as to how their time is being used because I feel as though there still is a need for these positions. I feel as though just saying that they've been placed in jobs where we have vacancies is not sufficient information as to the rationale behind why we created them, what is the intent of the role, and so my question, it's nice that we can pull them to then go to other schools that are in need, but it's not then meeting the district need. You're taking a resource from a school to move to a different school for a one-off. So I am still very concerned about the behaviorist positions being eliminated. Unless anyone has other data they want to share with me that we're not having issues in our school and that we can eliminate these jobs.
I'm not suggesting that we don't have issues. I'm suggesting that with the investments that we've made in strong MTSS systems and the support that we're providing from central office, that we'll be able to provide the same level of service to schools right now around school culture and behavior that we have in the past when these positions were floating around.
So I'd be looking
And
at,
if anybody from our team wants to just elaborate on that, feel free to come up.
so I'd be looking at data this time next year as to what it was this year and what it is next year to determine if this was the right decision. Because because I don't see, because I'm not privy to the understanding the data, to being shared the data, I should say, as to why these decisions are made. But I'd be looking at, better understanding it.
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to share any data, Ms. Wilson. I think it would be hard to look at data next year and say that these positions were the reason if the data went up or down. As I said, there's we've added additional counselors, we've added to our student support teams. Our director of social emotional learning now has, a few years under her belt in Holyoke Public Schools and supporting counselors, and our EDSLs. There's just so many support that we believe this was a very smart investment 3 years ago when we made it and when we had ESSER. And right now we feel really good about being able to continue to move on that trajectory and move the work forward without those positions. And I will name, if we had ESSER, if we had more ESSER money, or if we didn't have to make cuts, that we wouldn't even be having this conversation. And in a couple of years, there's other things that we're going to have to look at, because we're going to be looking at flat revenue when Student Opportunity Act is no longer increasing. It's just going to be flat. And we're going to have to look at everything every single year. Some of you have been here a lot longer, the days before COVID, the days before ESSER, the days before Student Opportunity Act. We had to make cuts every single year. I mean, my first 5 years in Holyoke, we averaged $4 million cuts a year. So this is one that we felt strongly we would be able to move forward without impacting students.
Are you set, Ms. Wilson? Okay. Ms. Tinsley Williams?
Sean, back to counselors. Say we have an emergency. Do we have enough counselors? Because you said you hired one, but how many do we have per school?
Yeah, so we budget both guidance and adjustment counselors, and there's a dedicated allocation per school outside of any sub-separate programming. So sub-separate programs have their own staffing of counselors, and then in addition to that, there's an allocation for every school. So with the additional one that we added, we're averaging about one counselor for every 100 students throughout the district, and that's pretty consistent from school to school. And so when we look at the counselor caseloads with the principals, we also look at it with our student support team and with our director of pupil services, because part of the counselor's caseload could be servicing IEPs. And so we want to make sure that we understand how much of their time is sort of committed to IEPs and how much is free to handle daily things that pop up. So that was one of the reasons, for example, why we added that additional counselor to our school. So based on our discussions with principals and with our pupil services team, I feel like our counselor allocation is strong.
Do they come from other schools, or we have our own?
They're all our employees, yeah. They're all, and they're all, except for maybe one next year, dedicated to a school. They're not hopping from school to school.
Thank you.
Mr. Collmore?
Yeah, just a question here. When writing grants or grants coming in for us, is there a transportation component in there that we try to ask for more money for transportation because it went up?
We don't fund transportation on grants, but we do get some reimbursement for types of transportation. McKinney-Vento is one of those types of transportation. So when we complete our end of year report and we report to the state how much we spent on McKinney-Vento, the city gets a portion of that reimbursed. Same thing with foster care. But currently we don't, most of the grants that we have, kind of the same rules around net school spending would apply. They wouldn't allow us to include transportation to and from school as part of that would be considered supplanting if you've ever heard that. You know, any transportation that we do have on grants is supplemental. So it could be transportation to enrichment programs or things that aren't, you know, just normal to and from school. It could be field trips, stuff like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple. So as far as bus routes, not talking about what the consultant's doing, but who does all the bus routes?
So we have a transportation manager who works for the district who develops the bus routes.
Independently from the bus company?
Yep.
They
Yeah,
have no say.
we pay for, I won't say they have no say, but we have our own route building software. And if we need route changes or things like that throughout the year, it comes from our transportation department.
And how often is it calibrated to look for economic efficiencies in the route building?
It's at least once every year when we're building the routes. So like this past week, we looked at what next year, the model for next year with the middle schools consolidating. That's why the superintendent brought up that there's some sticky issues. If we were to go with the most efficient route and follow our policies, there's going to be some impacts to folks who currently have busing that wouldn't have busing under the new scenario next year. So we want to get ahead of that and talk through those issues. But every spring, this time of the year, she's rebuilding those routes.
Yeah, and Mr. Sheehan, that's different than 3 years ago or 4 years ago. We did have the vendor doing those routes, and part of the efficiencies that we realized was bringing that routing in-house. We definitely realized some savings in bringing the routing in-house and not just the vendor working and telling us what the routes were going to be.
So what's the balance when doing the routes of economic efficiency based on student efficiency on the routes?
It's probably a balance of economic efficiency and like family satisfaction, I would say, is probably the trade-offs, right? So if you're completely efficient to the cost, you're going to have more disruption and probably upset families with students having to walk that maybe had bus routes before. I would say we haven't seen a lot of creep in our bus routes since I've been here. In fact, I think my first year we reduced a couple that was already in works before I started. And the only increase we increased one minibus this past year, but it was because we got rid of 8 or 60, I can't remember what the exact number was, vans, and we converted them to minibuses. So we did increase on the minibus side as a result, but it's because we eliminated numerous van routes.
And the current bus contract, when does that expire?
So it's a 5-year contract, and FY24 was the first year. So FY28 would be the final year of the first 5, and then there's an option to renew for an additional 5.
Okay, and when that was, so it was FY24, you said?
Yeah.
How many bids were submitted?
I can get you that answer. I want to say it was 3 or 4, but I can get that.
Yeah, it was 3, and we went with the lowest bid. Okay. And if you guys recall, we actually, when we first received the bids, we were looking at like I want to say a 21% increase, and working with folks on the city and the chief procurement officer at the city, we decided to rebid the routes, or to rebid the contract and change some of the specs. So, you know, we asked the vendors, like, why is this going up 22%? And they said, well, because in your bid specs, you're requiring all brand new vehicles, and you're requiring that no vehicle be, you know, have more than 75,000 miles, and you got all these things that are in your bid specs that are expensive. So we went back, sharpened our pencil, worked with a consultant, and said, okay, what do we need, and how could we write these bid specs differently that will make the bid more competitive? And in doing so, we were able to save, I want to say, $700,000 that year, which is a $700,000 in savings every year in doing so.
And I would hope, as we move forward with talking about transportation and costs, that we explore opportunities to possibly be innovative and look towards our neighboring communities to do multi-district bidding for buses, and to incorporate other districts that may be able to be aligned with our school start and end times, to have larger contracts. There are 66 major bus companies that serve Massachusetts. and the fact that it's usually just the same names all the time. There's people out there that I think could help with that, and I think if we had more communities involved, and I would task you as being superintendent with your network of superintendents to really think differently and to bid this out as a regional type of program rather than just city by city and all of us having to do a million different transportation companies. The other item I want to talk about that was a cut, which I'm glad it's a cut, the $122,000 for transitioning to a salaried superintendent position for receivership. Now, I understand what that is that we get a bill from the state that covers the receiver's salary and plus this $122,000. The bill that we get, I assume that that also includes fringe benefits.
The current bill, yeah, so
Yeah.
it includes everything, yep.
So, and obviously we're going to be taking on the cost of fringe and salary. So what does this other 122 count for that the state gets?
They use a flat ratio for fringe, so it's essentially like a 50% on top of whatever wages are. So it's sort of a flat fringe rate that includes things like retirement, it includes the health insurance, it would include any other fringe benefits that they offer.
But it's not an actual like number that they calculate. They're just taking almost like an indirect cost amount.
Yeah.
They're taking
A
a
fringe
percentage.
rate.
And I'll name that, like, our current fringe benefit budget, if you look at it from year to year, it's not changing
Yeah.
from one year to the next. So we work with the city to, hey, what is it that is our share of active health insurance? And, you know, we need to see the data to support that number, because that once we give that funding over to the city, we don't have an opportunity to access that if we spend less. Where that happens is on the end of year report, because on the end of year report, we can't just report what we estimated for active health insurance. We actually have to pull the details, and Sean works. We're able to go into our payroll system and take a look at who has an active plan and what the cost is, and then true that up on the end of year report, and then it affects our budget for the upcoming year. So fringe benefits is flat, whether this change was happening or not. Like that was going to be the number.
Yeah, and I'm not concerned with our fringe benefits, but I guess I think that the state was theoretically overcharging us because they were profiting off of us and not doing a charge for actual benefits that were being delivered.
Yeah, I don't know what the arrangements were, but yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they profited over $1 million over the 10 years probably. And I know the salary's gone up and it's changed, but I think $1 million's probably a good round number that they probably profited off of that yearly. On the backs of Holyoke, who struggled with budgets, when we've talked about this, an extra 150, even say 100,000 a year would have been nice. So, moving on to budget assumptions.
All right, and I will just say, because it was brought up and I know there was a question, electric school buses, we had that electric school bus grant for now still exists, and the latest update is that we could potentially see those electric buses in January of 2026 if all goes well and there's no hiccups along the way. So that's 19 electric school buses that would come in to support our fleet and replace diesel buses.
Yeah, I think on these budget assumptions, as Sean alluded, we're using the governor's budget. So this assumes that that the state budget, once finalized, is going to be consistent with the governor's budget. After the year end, we'll have to make some adjustments. And then it also assumes that the city's going to meet their net school spending requirement. All indications are that, all conversations we've had with the mayor and with the auditor is that that's going to be the case. We are building in what we estimated for circuit breaker, and we're assuming that none of that's going to get cut, and also that no other federal funding is going to get cut significantly, and that our E-rate applications are going to be approved. These are all general assumptions that we assume every year, and we also have to make an assessment, an assumption on enrollment. The way we develop the budget is we take, October 1's enrollment, and we take January 31st or January 1st enrollment, and we do an average, and we have conversations with principals about, students aging out, students leaving, things like that. I think the most unpredictable enrollment is probably in pre-K and K, right? Because those students aren't here right now. But we're assuming that the numbers that we have in the budget are going to be consistent next year. And if they're not, we have to make adjustments. Lost time, we're assuming 2 million, which is pretty consistent with last year. And we're assuming the carry forward of $2 million. I know that there's a divider in there. I don't know if we have any questions on.
Any questions on any of that, on the budget assumptions?
And
26 budget.
yeah, and then now we can dive into the budget. I think we can summarize the next 3 slides with us trying to articulate that we're funded at net school spending, and that the majority of our budget is funded by the state, so 88%, and then 11.5 is funded locally by local taxes. And then, a few slides later, there's just a comparison about where we are relative to net school spending. So we're in third in terms of the amount of funding that is funded by the local contribution versus the state aid. And we usually bounce anywhere between second and third. Like, I don't know why Springfield and Holyoke trade places almost every year, but that's where we're at. The average school district in Massachusetts, if you take every single district and take the average, they're funded, I want to say like 27% or 24% above net school spending. And that's a lot of money. I'm not implying that the city should do that. I'm just trying to provide some context relative to Holyoke. But we can jump right into the overall budget on slide 34, and I'll kick it back to Sean.
Thank you. So again, I'm going to just touch on the highlights on these slides. If you have questions, feel free to ask them when we get to the end on other things I don't specifically cover, but I'm going to point out the most impactful pieces of each one. So this is just a pie chart of our budget, and it shows you how much of the budget goes towards schools versus other departments. And even those other departments, I would say a vast majority of them you might consider school funding, like academics. There's assessments in there, there's curriculum in there, there's curriculum leaders that are part of that academics budget. Same thing with family and community engagement. That's our, the teams that support community engagement in the schools. So this is how we manage the supervision of the budget in terms of cabinet leaders and the budgets they manage, but there's really more that goes into the schools.
Yeah, as another great example is finance and operation includes all of our utilities. So, like, although it's managed in finance and operations cost center, like those are really school costs. It's not like that doesn't represent, what's in central office costs.
So you can see the comparison of 25 to 26. I'm not going to touch on all these now because they're going to come up again later, and I'll cover them when they pop up. So this is just an overall summary of some of the key changes. Again, these are going to be discussed on the upcoming slides, so I'm going to keep going. So the first cost center is essentially the assistant superintendent and the departments that the assistant superintendent oversees, which are academics, people services, and school leadership. This is the breakdown of funding between those 3 areas. And as you might imagine, people services, which includes out-of-district tuition, is the largest of the group. Here's a breakdown of those changes. So in academics, the $311,000 increase from 25 to 26, that is related to the turnaround funding going away and bringing over curriculum materials and some softwares and subscriptions into the general fund because they're needed expenditures. The increase would have been greater, but it was offset by that ANET software reduction that I mentioned earlier. And you'll see that on an upcoming slide. Pupil services going up $976,000. The biggest piece here, about $700,000 of that increase, is the out-of-district tuition going up, the 5% roughly rate increases for out-of-district schools, and then the way we fund out-of-district tuition and that makeup changing, having less carryover funding for next year, increase the general fund share. And again, there's going to be a slide that charts it out for you over a few years, so I will talk about that more then. And then in the Office of School Leadership, that's where we have the reduction of the ETSL. So you'll see that budget going down basically for the value of that position. Overall, underneath the assistant superintendent, we're projecting a 5.4 FTE reduction. It's the Etzel position. It's the vacant occupational therapist position that I mentioned on the reduction screen. The 3 behaviorists, and then a reduction in some clerical time that's funded on a grant for pupil services. This more or less says what I just said. So now we're going to talk about those departments a little bit more. We're still underneath the assistant superintendent umbrella. This is the only department that's kind of like this, but so this is just a breakdown of all the different sort of smaller departments that fall under academics. I want to be very, I just want to highlight that art, it looks small. It's because art, we fund the positions in the schools. There's not a lot of costs that are held centrally. Schools budget most of the consumables and the supplies. Music, by comparison, looks larger. It's because we budget centrally, like equipment replacement for musical instruments and things like that are budgeted centrally, so it looks larger by comparison. But if you have any questions on our total investment in art, we can get you that number. It's a larger number. Here's a breakdown of those changes. So in the academics section, that's sort of, it's our executive director of our academics, and some of the curriculum leaders are in that budget. That reduction there is the assessment software of $154,000, offset by some other things moving up and down. Down below, the 2 areas, or 3 areas that were impacted the most by the turnaround grant going away, or anticipated to go away, is extended learning. There was a large portion of our summer and after school programs that was funded on turnaround. So we've brought a portion of that back into the general fund because we're going to maintain those programs. And then math and science curriculum materials for both of those departments were funded on turnaround. We've brought the ones that we need to continue, we've brought those back into the general fund budget. We didn't bring everything from turnaround. When we went through our budget process and our hearings, we looked at everything that was funded on turnaround, and we asked our department heads, like, which ones are essential to continue. And so we've only brought the ones that were essential into the general fund budget. Other ones were discontinued. We got a musical instruments playing here. The picture relates, it's probably the only one I nailed, but no change in FTE. And this says sort of what I just said. All right, so now we're on pupil services. So there's a few different components of pupil services, the largest portion being out-of-district tuition. But it also, that budget oversees psychologists, related services, which are like specialist positions, our education team leaders, some summer services, and other services like tutoring and things like that. So you can see the changes of that $976,000 change, $700,000 when it was in the out-of-district tuition. Many of the other increases are just related to our projections of salary increases and things like that for next year. There is also in that related services section and a reduction of the vacant occupational therapist position. So when you look at the FTE below, the net reduction of 1.4, it's that vacant occupational therapist position, and 0.4 is the reduction in the clerical support, which was from a grant. And then there was a little bit of a shift between the general fund and our IDA grant of some salaries, but it was a shift, not a reduction or increase. So this is that puzzly chart that I was talking about. So this shows how we fund out of district tuition. There's 4 major funding sources. So the blue is our general fund. Red is circuit breaker, which is a state reimbursement for special education costs when they exceed a certain threshold. Yellow is our IDA grant, and then green is sort of a catch-all for other. And mostly what other means is either ESSER, or which has gone away now, or using carry forward, falls into that other bucket. And then the numbers in the blue are how many out-of-district placements we're expecting. So we're not expecting a big increase for next year based on our work with the Pupil Services Department. We are projecting the carry forward, that green bar, to go down because we're going from 3 million to 2 million in terms of how much is expected to be able to support the FY26 budget. IDA, we're assuming the same level of funding for out-of-district tuition on IDA. Circuit breaker, we're actually getting a little bit more funding, or we anticipate having a little bit more funding that we're going to roll over from this year to next year to support out-of-district tuition. And so the net result is sort of I wouldn't say modest, but about a $700,000 increase in the general fund budget. And then the last leg underneath the assistant superintendent is the school leadership. This is the assistant superintendent, the Edsels, some student support positions. This reduction is entirely just that one Edsel position. And then there's actually a typo where it says 2026 in the total. That should be a total of 3, not 4. The other 3 positions are those behaviorist positions that we discussed earlier. All right, so now we're moving to a different cabinet leader. We're moving to family and community engagement under Mr. Mogel, who's here tonight. Thank you. So Mr. Mogel oversees 2 sort of sub-departments, which is family and community engagement more broadly, but also our language access team, which handles all the interpretations and translations. So family and community engagement has sort of a modest increase just related to the salaries projected to go up. Where we see the big reduction that we talked about earlier is in language access, going down 130,000. Again, related to that 5th translator that we hired for this year, that's allowing us to reduce our contracted costs for going forward. And there is one reduction overall, which is FACE. So we fund our FACE team on Title I, and because we have 2 middle schools going to 1, there's 1 fewer FACE position needed for next year. Next is my department, finance and operations. So 2 pieces here are the business office and operations, which includes maintenance, utilities, and facilities. For the business office, an increase of about 3.62%. This is mostly related to, we did a sort of an update of how we apply indirect costs. Whenever we have grants, there's a small portion of indirect costs that we can apply to offset administrative costs. Those were mostly going to apply to finance previously. We've kind of realigned it so that there's a portion supporting finance, there's a portion supporting human resources, there's some offsetting facility costs. We sort of spread it out a little bit more, and we'll keep that methodology consistent going forward. So you'll see, when we get to human resources and facilities, you'll see an offset there. And then in operations, there's a net reduction, which is due to that maintenance administrator position that I mentioned, that we're merging 2 positions into 1, and we'll just have 1 director overseeing the department. The net FTE reduction is that 1 maintenance position going away. The next department is transportation and strategy, which oversees transportation. This is the one that looks the most like Pac-Man, and communications, and then enrollment and the enrollment center and McKinney-Vento. So that's all underneath transportation and strategy. So communications and strategy and the enrollment center, not much going on there related to the budget. Transportation is the big increase. The FTE reduction that we noted before is sort of spread across all 3 of these departments in sort of a third based on her support of those departments. But really the big increase here is the transportation. Human resources, so there's no FTE changes in human resources. The budget was pretty flat, a small increase for compensation. The reason there's this reduction is because of the indirect costs that I mentioned earlier. We're now offsetting some of the human resources budget with indirect costs going forward. Technology and data systems, so there's a 3.5% increase. That's driven by 2 things. One, we did a sort of a review of all of our positions throughout the district. One of the positions in the technology department, when we evaluated it, it was lower than where it should have been on our compensation scale. So this year we brought those positions up to where they should be. They're not like manager, director, there are positions that we really needed to make sure that they're funded equitably throughout the district. And then the other big increase there was software and just subscriptions that go up from year to year, but no FTE change in this area. Superintendent School Committee, this is your budget and your budget. So school committee's winning.
There's a few more of us, so
I'm just saying. I think the exit receivership was to change this chart. So Superintendent is going down $79,000. Again, what was originally budgeted for FY25 compared to what we'll have next year with a salary position, reduce that cost quite a bit. School committee, the only increase was really just aligning. When we created the support position for the school committee, it was based on estimated hours and estimated salary. We didn't have actuals. Now we have actuals, so it's just adjusting it to be reflective of what we currently have. And there is technically an FTE increase because now we have the superintendent position. One of the rare instances where we add FTE but reduce cost. And that brings us to the schools. So there's a few different things that are part of the school budget, or sort of the school high-level category. So we have it in bands between elementary schools, middle school, and high school. It also includes transitions, which is our 18 to 22-year-old program, our athletic department, nursing, retired teacher health insurance, which is an assessment from the state, and then other state assessments like charter and choice costs. So this is how those are changing. So at the elementary school, the increase of 2.44%, it probably would have been greater. One change we did make in the staffing allocation methodology was prior to this year, we were guaranteeing 3 classroom teacher positions in grades 3 through 5, regardless of enrollment. We made a change going forward that we're going to make all allocations enrollment based. We did that for a few things. One, there were some schools that couldn't fill those 3 positions, and so they ended up having to go with 2 because they just couldn't fill the 3rd. And so we did it for fairness. And then it also just sort of, it kind of distributed the FTE more equitably across schools based on enrollment. So we've made that change. We've talked about it with the principals. And so the impact of that is it's reduced about 8 classroom teaching positions where we had 3 guaranteed. Now there's some grades that might only have 2 going forward. And again, no teachers are losing their jobs, so that they'll fill other positions in the district. Middle school, so 3.1%. Again, this one also probably would have been higher, but because we were able to consolidate STEM and Metcalf into PEC, there were some efficiencies, like we had 4 expert teachers before, now we're only going to have 2. We had 4 interventionists before, now we're only going to have 2. Some administrative cost savings as well as a result. So again, that increase would have been greater, but there were some offsets that brought it down. And then the high school had a little bit larger than typical increase. That's where Opportunity Academy primarily lives, the expansion of Opportunity Academy. It's also where the BAR funding, because the BAR grant went away, those costs have been brought into the general fund, were probably the 2 biggest reasons for that increase. And I think that's all I'll cover there, unless we get questions.
Yeah, I think that the next few slides we can skip. They're all informational. It's like enrollment and major cost driver pie charts or bar charts. So we can take questions.
Ms. Tinsley Williams.
Sean, I have a quick question. The instruments, are they rented, or do we purchase the instruments, musical ones?
I'd like to call on Rebecca Thompson to answer that question, if the committee's okay with it.
Suspend.
There we go. We do purchase the instruments for the district. We were able to make a large investment because of ESSER, and it helped us to really make an investment in the music program in that way. And we collaborate with the community music school to ensure that we're able to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Can you just tell me more about this athletic trainer position?
Yeah, so, and I might call on Beth Gage to talk about that one, but we reclassified the trainer position and brought the salary up. So that's the biggest reason that the section went up, was reclassifying that position. We had posted it and we couldn't find, I believe we couldn't find anyone to fill it.
Yeah, we've been without an athletic trainer for the year, so we've been contracting out for that. So we did agree that after several attempts to recruit an athletic trainer, that we had to reevaluate the salary and be more competitive.
So has one been hired yet?
Not at this time.
How long has it been posted with the higher salary?
I will have to check on that.
More than a month?
Usually we do rounds of 2 weeks, just to refresh the posting and get it at the top of the list, but I can see how many times how many iterations of that they have done.
Has there been an athletic trainer hired that's been an employee of the district since August?
No.
No, other than the athletic manager has been performing some, like, so we're doing a split where the athletic manager, who is certified as an athletic trainer, is supporting, I don't know if it's for home games or for away games, but one of the two, and then the vendors providing those services for the times that our athletic manager can't cover that.
And what are we paying out to a vendor?
It's an hourly rate,
yeah.
right? Beth, do you know? We don't, yeah, we can get that.
Yeah,
I'd like to know how much we're paying and how many hours they've been utilized since we started hiring them.
Okay.
Any other? Okay. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we can skip. So I think final thoughts is that, for the most part, this, despite what we had initially thought in December, after going through all of the budget hearings and with the principals and going through all of the budget hearings with those that manage a budget, we feel pretty strongly that, we have what we need for next year. There were no major reductions. We didn't touch class sizes. We didn't, do any layoffs or anything like that. And everything that we have in the budget is aligned to not just our priorities, but the priorities that the school committee set at the beginning of the capacity building plan process. We've been able to make investments in schools. I'm really excited for the new school that we have being built right now for next year. There are some uncertainties, the rising costs in transportation. We know this has been an issue for many, many years. We were able to avoid a 22% increase, but it was still, a 12% increase in that first year and a 5% increase in rates for the duration of the contract. So that continues to be an issue that we got to work together and tackle, because we know that, that this actually impacts the city's budget and their ability to provide other services that our residents in Holyoke deserve. So we got to work together and do anything that we can. And obviously there's a lot going on at the federal government. So seems like once a week we find out something new, and we're going to keep our ears to the ground and keep anything anything that we hear at the federal level in terms of cuts or anything like that. We're going to make sure that we keep this committee apprised to any impact that would be had on the budget itself. On the last slide that is in your packet, we've included budget cost centers. So one of the things, the ones that were voted on this year as part of the capacity building plan, is a slight difference for next year in that the now pupil services will be under the assistant superintendent. So we just included those two comparisons, and that's the last slide on slide 79. I am interested in engaging to start talking about next year. I know that the school committee voted to approve a process of budget transfers and the cost centers that we were going to manage the budget to. But so we have next year what we're proposing, but I know that there's going to be some discussion in subcommittee around that for next year, because what we agreed to this year around transfers and cost centers was for this year during the capacity building plan. But we got to start thinking about next year so that we can organize our budget in that way and make sure that we keep the committee apprised to all the movement in the budget throughout the year. But I, want to reinforce my gratitude towards Mr. Wellahan and the entire finance subcommittee, because they've been working really closely with us, and the budget advisory committee made some great recommendations that, we can work towards. But overall, I've I've been in school budgets for, too long, and there's been times where people leave crying, and this wasn't one of those years. Principals are really happy with what they've been allocated and what they're able to do with those resources on behalf of students. And we've kind of made some adjustments in district-wide budgets, but those were necessary because we're going to always strive every year, even when revenue's tight, we're going to strive to keep the cuts away from the classroom. That's kind of Sean's mission. Sean's main focus is how can we deal with these with less resources in a way that doesn't impact what's going on in the classroom and doesn't impact the things that matter most. So that's our presentation for today.
Mr. Wellahan.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to touch on the matter that we didn't really, we kind of glossed over the capital improvements that we've done throughout the district using the federal money. I know. Just want to thank Sean and the facility manager.
Also, Sean.
The other Sean.
Sean and Sean.
Two Seans. Two Seans. Just want to thank them for their success in terms of getting our facilities upgraded. Anything from playground equipment to roofs, to windows, to doors. We've seen it all in the spreadsheets. We now have a capital plan moving forward.
Yes.
For that, that's something that was lacking.
And that'll be in our budget
yeah,
document.
So that was lacking really in the citywide too, and now through the school. So we had that moving forward. I think the plan will be submitted to the full committee coming up. So again, just want to thank Mr. Soto, his team, and Sean for the budget that we're presenting. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a clarifying
Sure.
question? So would this go to finance for a recommendation?
Yep, I have notes here that
Okay,
I was going to
alright.
go over. So I spoke with Dr. Rivera Colon, and she will actually have a letter from the commissioner indicating that the school committee can vote on the budget and approve the budget prior to July 1st. With that, in a moment, let me go through this and then I'll look for a motion. There'll be a motion to send this to the finance committee. This will go to the finance committee, and the finance committee will then, at some point prior to when we vote on the budget, we'll make a recommendation on the final budget to the school committee. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to refer this presentation to the finance committee.
So moved.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Izaza, seconded by Mr. Collmore. Any discussion? Roll call, please. Ms. Feliciano.
Mr. Izaza? Mr. Wellahan?
Yes.
Mr. Collmore?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson? Yes. Dr. Rivera Colon?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Ms. LaFave? Yes. And Ms. Hensley Williams?
See.
Motion passes.
Joshua, yes.
Oh,
I'm
the
back.
mayor.
Back on?
Oh.
Okay.
Sorry, she didn't realize you were back on.
I didn't realize you were back on, sorry.
No, I understand.
With
Mayor Garcia?
glasses.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay. Thank you to Sean and the staff that came out tonight.
Thank you, everyone. And the next part of the superintendent report is the Q3 update and progress towards the district benchmarks and goals. I've included a lot of information. I know that part of what the school committee is going to be doing is providing input on the superintendent's evaluation process that the commissioner has to do by July 1. And I know that that's probably coming up later, but included in there is a complete write-up. You can see, we have quarterly data retreats with our team to look at data like DNA, STAR, DIBELS. We've engaged in a attendance root cause analysis, constantly collecting data as we walk through classrooms. We have quarterly SIP, school improvement plan reviews that we do, all in support and supporting our principals and our school leaders and our instructional leaders on making sure that we have quality instruction in classrooms. Our EDSOs are having weekly coaching sessions with each principal, supporting them around instruction. And we, on a quarterly basis, report all of you how we're doing relative to the benchmarks that we set. There were 15 set. We have about 11 of them on track and 4 off track. Many strengths to name. It's all in there. I think the one that I want to lift most is the support for our early literacy curriculum throughout the district and the work that's going on. You know, I visited a classroom in Morgan this morning to view the high dosage tutoring that's going on with the Davis Foundation and Ignite Reading, and they were there to just see it in action, and it's just a beautiful sight to see all our first graders at Morgan. Not all, but like the majority of that classroom was engaging in tutoring, and they're reading. Like they are reading, and we've seen. You know, I'm not ready to share the progress of that Ignite Reading, but the early indicators that we're seeing right now, some kids are making leaps from like kindergarten level all the way to second grade, and it's just amazing to see. That's just a portion of the early literacy work that we've been working on over the past 3 years, but definitely that's a bright spot that I want to lift. You know, I created a video the other day with Rebecca just highlighting the PRISM grant, highlighting our early literacy work, and some of the bright, and you know, that those are some really bright spots that not only we can see now, but the impact that that's going to have on a child when they're in 5th and 6th and 7th grade. You know, I'm really optimistic, and I want to make sure that, you know, I'll be keeping a close eye on what's going on and with some of our youngest learners, because we're really excited about that. The middle school project is going well, on track, under budget. You know, we're excited for the ribbon cutting, and we're excited to get some of the schools teachers to be able to go take a look at the school. The work that we did around MTSS has contributed to a dip in referrals and suspensions, and the teacher mentor program is working. Some things that we're slightly behind is, you know, around early literacy is fully implementing those and delivering those high quality lessons. I think we set a benchmark of about 8% fully, and right now we're, you know, 45 fully, 26 partially. But we're making progress every quarter. Learner variability continues to be an area that we need to focus on for next year. We set out to make sure that, you know, the learner variability and the appropriate scaffolds were a part of weekly planning and data meetings, and that's an area where we fell behind, but we recognize that, you know, we couldn't just do everything all at once. That was one of the things that requires more attention next year, but we feel like we're in a good place and we have a good foundation to build off of. Attendance and chronic absenteeism, although we've seen 2.7% decrease in chronic absenteeism from this point last year when the Q3 update was written, it's still not where we'd like to be. But despite all of our efforts, you know, our sharing of weekly data, attendance data and best practices, the work that the attendance task force is doing. I've been a part of the attendance task force like since I've been here, and I'm really optimistic about the work that they're doing now. They come together on a monthly basis, and each school is able to share a problem of practice, similar to how we do our quarterly SIP reviews. So one week we might hear from Sullivan, another week we might hear from Dean, and they're all there listening and providing input and like asking questions like, oh, that's what you're doing, like we want to implement that back at our school. And it's just been, you know, it's been fun to watch in terms of how much more effective that task force is compared to previous years and the work that they were doing. And we set out to, you know, one of them was to have a collective teacher contract by June 30th. I'm not sure. That's one that, you know, based on our timeline, seems to be slightly behind. But in terms of the superintendent goals, you can see in there, you know, the communications one, I believe, is on track with all the updates, the quarterly updates, the letters to stakeholders, the short videos around instruction, and just my overall emails to the school committee on things that I normally hadn't communicated in the past. I've tried to make an effort to continue to build that communication, and then in the community, just make sure that we're pushing out and highlighting all the important work around instruction, so that people know what's going on. And for the student learning goals, you can see the early literacy one, our middle school target, our middle of the year data definitely exceeded its target. We're almost at where we set for the end of the year, but none of the end of year data is in. Right now the window's still open, and we won't have the end of year star data in that. From beginning of the year to middle of the year, we didn't kind of hit the halfway point, but we did see some progress. So you can see that some of those are partially met. And then in terms of the district improvement goals, you can see that 2 of them are partially met, and then 2 of them are met based on my self-assessment and the work that we've been doing. So all that information is in there, and I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Collmore?
Alamore, is your mic on?
And I think we have to emphasize more in getting our parents involved in their child, whether it be in the music program, which is wonderful, a wonderful thing all year long. We've had schools coming in here and playing instruments and things like this. It's wonderful. And these are things that we really need to emphasize in our schools. And athletics also. We have to instill in our students, choose a sport during the course of your school year to try out for a team. See if you like it. Talk to coach about your potential in playing different sports. And not only that, but we have to look at the budget for sports to make sure that we don't start cutting. And MIAA says you have to change the curriculum in your sports program to get to these things. And the last thing I want to talk about is an after school programs pertaining to athletic teams that you started, Doctor, quite a while ago. It's been working wonderful about our basketball, our soccer, or things like that have really come along, and it's proven here in our school systems because we're having championship teams. And this is what we really have to stress about, is get the parents involved, whether it's coming to school or coming to these athletic programs or music programs or things like this. Let's start emphasizing on those things.
Yeah, and I think it's an important thing to note as the school committee looks to craft goals for the superintendent next year. It may be a thought of us to have a goal around parent and community engagement and some of those aspects of it. But just some next steps on the superintendent's Q3 report and his goals and evaluation. So as you all know, at the last meeting, we approved an evaluation calendar that we have to fill out for the superintendent. So we have some hard copies here. However, there is an error in this. Something didn't print for some reason and we don't know why. Irene and I are trying to figure that out, but an aspect of it didn't print. So I'm going to pass these out and give a brief explanation on this. So this is a modified form from the DESI approved superintendent rubric, and it's modified for a couple of reasons. That the full superintendent evaluation has 4 standards that the superintendent would be evaluated on with goals and meeting goals. But the commissioner is in charge of evaluating the receiver on the district improvement goals and the benchmarks that the receiver set forward. So it's a little bit different than being superintendent. Yeah, I'm talking. We'll get right back over to you once I'm done talking, explaining this. So then what we are going to be focused on are the goals that the school committee established. So there were 6 goals: a professional practice goal, a student learning goal, and 4 district improvement goals that we had approved with the superintendent on there. So you'll see that on page 2 of this document that you received are listed out all of the receiver's goals. So from all of the information that the receiver provided to everyone, it's our job to go through and rate him on the goals. Now, what is missing at the top in the little blue chart, if you can see where it's blue, there are 3 boxes without words in it, and that's what didn't get printed. Now, we will get another copy to everyone, but what didn't get printed, if you look on page 1, it would say did not meet some progress and significant progress. So it's just those words missing that are there. So, but you'll get another copy of that. So what your job to do is to fill out page 2 and go through page 2, filling out using the data. So, and you have to evaluate if you believe that some progress has been made, if they've met the goal, if they've exceeded the goal by the data that the receiver has sent to everyone. And then once you're done, you go back to page 1 and you do overall ratings for each one. Now for professional practice and student learning goal, it's pretty easy because there's only 1 in each one. But for district improvement goals, there's 4, so you have to evaluate what one you'll place there. Then each member needs to provide written feedback and comments. And that's on the 3rd page for feedback. The preference is to get this done electronically if you can, because the Leadership and Accountability Committee has a very quick turnaround to get this turned around for the full school committee for our for our June 9th meeting. And so we'll be presenting these that the Leadership Committee aggregates at the June 9th meeting. Ms. Feliciano, at the last meeting, there was a date we gave out for when these are all due. I believe it was the 22nd. Is that? Yeah. So the 22nd, they're all due back in. So the Leadership and Accountability Committee can do their job on the 28th at 4 o'clock. So we need these by the 22nd. If they are not submitted by the 22nd, they will not be part of the official record. And that's what this committee voted on with that. All of your documents are public documents. Everything you put in here, you write in here, will be submitted along with the aggregated comments and ratings to the receiver and to the acting commissioner. Ms. Tensley Williams, did you have a question?
I was not trying to cut you off. I just wanted you to know I had a question, but you know what? It's all set.
Okay. Mr. Wellahan?
I'm not cutting you off either. Are we going to receive this electronically?
Yep. Okay. Electronically, it actually looks perfect, so it can be.
I'm sending it right now.
She's sending it.
Oh, okay.
Electronically, everything is there. When it was printed, for some reason, those 3 boxes disappeared.
I had May 23rd written down for the survey deadline, but you're saying the 22nd. So. Is there any other support that Mr. Soto is going to be sending us?
No, everything we have to evaluate him on the 6 goals are in the packet, or within the meeting packet now. We're within the meeting packet from the February meeting, right? We received some information in the February meeting.
Yeah.
So it's all there with the progress towards each goal.
So the February meeting and...
Yeah, but so it's cumulative. Yeah. So if you look at the information that went out in today's meeting, it's cumulative of the February information.
Okay.
So it's...
So today's meeting.
Yeah. So today is the most updated information with it.
Thank you.
And then when we look towards doing this next year, it'll be the larger process. And you have the entire packet. I believe Ms. Feliciano sent it out to everyone with the model language. So. Are you good?
Yeah, I wonder if Mogel can answer Mr. Collimore's question around family engagement efforts.
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's well. So one of the things that I think it's really important to note is that some of the work around family engagement that's really starting to be codified this year is how do we have the opportunity to engage with families at not high intense times, right? Unfortunately, sometimes we fall into a pattern in our schools where we're reaching out to families when things are happening. And so like a huge shout out to Mrs. Thompson's academic team, which is, I want to give a quick plug to our Rocket into Reading. Hope you all can attend. It's going to be this Thursday at the library. And that's a unique opportunity, something we haven't done in many years. The first big thing we're doing is trying to get every K to second kid a library card. And so we've sent out library applications. We're going to have a big evening. They're going to receive a free book. They're going to have an opportunity to learn about different oral C skills. I think that's really important. Those are things that we're trying to bring back, right? Finding different opportunities to engage with families, not when something is going wrong. Another shout out I want to talk about a little bit, our attendance celebrations. I would encourage you to come to those. I'm going to give you, I'm going to make sure Mr. Soto sends a personal invite in Q4. And so this year what we've done is we reorganized that to not only celebrate students beyond perfect attendance, right? We all miss days of work, right? Also most improved attendance, but we've also created a community dinner. And so what happens is schools are celebrating with students and they're sitting with their principal and staff members and having a community dinner. Q4 is a little bit, unfortunately, I'm giving out a little bit of a secret. We're going to have an ice cream truck for our students in Q4, which they're going to be excited about. So we're trying to find different ways. And if you've been to the attendance celebrations, you'll see that this year's been standing room only. It's been extremely packed. The other nice thing that's really been sort of a nuance. We're really trying to also push the celebration of our high school students. Everyone loves to celebrate elementary students, but what about our 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds? And what we've seen is that the introduction of having OA there, Opportunity Academy, as well as our transitions, we're starting to see more high school students be excited about being celebrated. And giving them quick shout outs like, hey, you have wrestling practice, put your hair. And so we're trying to find different ways to celebrate kids. The simple pattern is this. When our students are celebrated, parents show up. That's what we saw today. Oh, my kid's going to be in this, I'm going to show up for that. So how many times can we pair the celebration of a student or a small student performance with trying to bring parents in for something else? That's the key that we're starting to figure out. I think we need to be more strategic about that next year, but that's something we're starting to do, and we're starting to see more of that. The other piece, too, that I just want to also, don't want to belabor, but what I want to say, one of the things that we've really tried to do with our FACE department, and I had a meeting today that's a good example of that, we're really trying to reshape ourselves in customer service. I think sometimes we forget about that, right? Parents have to want to bring their kids to school, and so we have to address it from a customer service standpoint. And sometimes that's saying, okay, what's happened in the past that we need to address? What's the harm that we need to repair? And let's fix that, right? Sometimes parents show up, they see us as a system, and we have to remind them that might have happened to you 30 years ago. We're a different system now, right? And so those are some of the things we're doing. You're going to see some more things, but I would absolutely encourage you to come to Rocket into Reading at the library. That'll be from 5 to 7. Free pizza for the kids first. So I just want to say that. So please feed yourself something else. And other opportunities that we're going to be having. Attendance celebration, we'll be inviting you to that, as well as a lot of our step-up ceremonies, field days. There's a lot of different opportunities that we make with kids, and we just need to emphasize that and remind folks of that.
All set.
Okay. Mr. Wellahan.
What's the time for that? 5 to 7.
5 to 7.
5 to 7.
Thursday, 5 to 7. Yep.
Thank
And
you.
even if it rains, we have an indoor plan. And also a huge shout out to Miss Rosaza and Miss Espinoza Muffson. They're part of the academic team. They are leading this work. I want to absolutely say that. So I want to give them a huge shout out.
Thank you. Moving on to ratification of the interim superintendent's contract. I'll entertain a motion to ratify the contract of the assistant.
I'll make a
of
motion
the
to ratify
interim
the
superintendent.
make a motion to ratify the contract for the interim superintendent.
Moved by Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Tinsley Williams. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Marizaza? Yes. Mr. Wellahan?
Yes.
Mr. Collmore?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor Garcia?
Yeah.
Dr. Rivera Galode?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Ms. LaFave?
Yes.
Ms. Tensley Williams?
C.
Motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. Soto.
Thank you.
We would have had a nice document here to sign tonight, but since both the 2 out of 3 of the signatories on that are sitting on Zoom. Moving on to new business, entertain a motion, the school committee vote to accept the out-of-state field trip to High Meadows, Granby, Connecticut. on
I'd
June
like to make a
6th.
motion to take these as a package.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on any of these trips or questions? I do have one. It has to be the last one. So on the one for Morgan School for Connecticut Science Museum, is that really, that's not really a May 1st trip, right?
Yeah, I mean, this actually wasn't even. Yeah, we had conversations about taking it because the trip had already passed. So it just didn't get removed. And
So is it May 1st or May 23rd? The agenda says May 23rd, right? But
there was one that already happened, and I thought we had removed it. Irene, I don't know.
It came into a PDF, and so I cannot remove a PDF
Okay.
without an Adobe license. I
Yeah.
tried removing it, so we did discuss about them being separated just in case this happens again.
Yeah, so there is one in your packet that already happened, and my apologies. I don't know how it ended up.
I'd like to make a motion to amend.
well, it's not listed on the ones.
Oh,
that
it's not
you-
listed, then never
Okay.
mind.
Okay. All those, roll call, please.
Mr. Izaza? Mr. Willihan?
Yes.
Mr. Collmore?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yeah.
Dr. Rivera Colon?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Ms. LaFave?
Yes.
Ms. Tensley Williams?
See.
Motion passes. Entertain a motion to refer the budget transfer for review to the Finance and Operations Subcommittee.
Second.
Someone want to make the motion?
Oh, I'll make the motion to refer the
Okay.
budget transferred for the review to the Finance and Operations
Made by
Subcommittee.
Ms. Wilson, seconded by Mr. Collmore. Roll call. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Izaza? Mr. Willihan?
Yes.
Mr. Collmore?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Dr. Rivera Colon?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Ms. LaFave?
Yes.
Ms. Tensley Williams?
See.
I will entertain a motion to refer to an order to the joint City Council School Committee meeting introduced by Mr. Wellahan to have the superintendent, police department discuss school resource officers for the new Peck Middle School.
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Collmore. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Izaza. Any discussion? Mr. Wellahan?
Thank you. Yeah, real quick, I know our new police chief, Mr. Keenan, he was discussing the lack of officers recently. I think he was in front of the finance committee. I know he brought up the fact that he might not have enough officers to support the school system in terms of the resource officers. So I'm not sure what conversations he's had with Mr. Soto, but I just like to discuss that process and his numbers going forward. I'm kind of concerned that Peck is being brought online. There's a doubt whether he can supply the school with enough officers. So I just like to talk about that. Thank you.
Any other discussion on referring this to committee? Roll call, please.
Mr. Izaza? Mr. Willihan?
Yes.
Mr. Collmore?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Dr. Rivera Colon?
Yes.
Yes.
LaFave?
Yes. See.
Motion passes. An order filed by Mr. Wellahan that the school committee send a letter of recognition to Athletic Director Melanie Martin and a letter of recognition to the Pioneer Valley Excellence in Teaching Awards. That the letter be sent. Someone want to move that motion?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Collmore. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Izaza. Any discussion? Mr. Wellahan?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to thank Miss Martin for the efforts and her knowledge and her skills, and I just want to make sure that she's getting the accolades for the award. I'm not sure. Maybe we can have her zoom in, maybe, and we can thank her in person if we have any questions for her. She might want to do that. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Isaza. Mr. Wellahan.
Yes.
Mr. Collmore.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mayor Garcia.
Yes.
Dr. Rivera Colon.
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan.
Yes.
Ms. LaFave.
Yes.
Ms. Tensi Williams.
See.
Motion passes. Entertain a motion that the school committee vote to accept and approve the meeting minutes of the February 27th, 2025 Finance and Operations meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Tensley Williams. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Isaza. Mr. Wellahan.
Yes.
Mr. Collmore.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mayor Garcia.
Yes.
Dr. Rivera Colon.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. LaFave.
Yes.
And Ms. Tensi Williams.
See.
Motion passes. Moving on to committee reports. If you don't have a report, saying no report is an acceptable answer. You don't just have to report if there's nothing going on. Policy and governance,
No report.
finance and operations.
I have a report. Real quick, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, the committee's will be meeting on May 22nd at 5:30. It'll be in agenda posted soon. And I know there's a budget transfer that we have to discuss and more work on the budget. Thank you. May 22nd at 5:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joint City Council School Committee. No report?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, I met with, excuse me, City Councilor Kevin Jordan, and we're going to get together shortly and set up a meeting for June.
Okay.
And we will notify everyone.
thank you. Local Control Subcommittee.
No report.
Leadership, Accountability, and Measurement. Just that our next meeting was mentioned before is the 28th at 4 o'clock at Central Office. Okay, ongoing business, and I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Rivera Colon, just because I don't think what's here is clear. I think she has an appointment. So,
Yes. I'm going to actually let Anthony give the update and then I'll do the appointment.
Yeah, so right now we're putting a process together. So the legal service request for proposals was emailed to all attorneys that are members of the Massachusetts Council of School Attorneys, except for ones that were departments of municipalities. Proposals are going to be due by May 22nd and will be reviewed by the school committee or an appointed review committee. The reviewers will ultimately select an attorney they recommend for interviews, which are tentatively scheduled right now for June 9th. And ultimately the school committee will make the final decision. So we are looking for the vice chair to appoint members to that ad hoc committee.
Dr. Rivera Colon.
And I talked to Mr. Soto to include in that ad hoc committee Sean and Beth to support us to that work. So the appointment would be Mr. Sheehan and Mr. Isasa for the ad hoc committee for paring down the RFPs for the legal counsel.
Okay, so the 4 members are Beth Gage, Sean Mangano, Orlando Izaza, Devin Sheehan. Are you making that motion, Dr. Rivera Colon?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Wilson. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes. Mr. Isaza.
Yes.
Mr. Wellahan.
Yes.
Mr. Collmore,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Garcia,
Yes.
Dr. Rivera Colon,
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Ms. LaFave,
Yes.
and Ms. Tenzie Williams.
Si, señorita.
Motion passes. And just one little bit of clarification. So the goal is that the committee narrows down, it may be more than one, could be 1 to 3. And talking to the vice chair, the plan is to do interviews on June 9th at 5 o'clock. So the whole school committee does the interviews of the council and then vote that night. Monday, it's 1 hour before a regular scheduled meeting. So then that will give ample time for the contracting process to begin, to be prepared for August.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you. We've already taken care of the evaluation tool. Moving on to announcements. You'll see the announcements in your packet. I have a couple of it that I was asked to mention. One of which is a reminder that tomorrow is the State of the City address at 6 o'clock at City Council chambers. And the mayor asks that everyone attend that if they can. And that the budget hearing that the superintendent and business manager and the committee, that at least the subcommittee attends on the city budget, is the 19th of May at City Council chambers. I'm assuming it starts at 6, but you know how those run, like you don't know when you'll be called, so it's kind of just a kind of camp out, bring a meal, wait.
We are last on the list, just so you know.
So if it starts at 6 and there's a few other departments, like 2:30 in the morning, I'd count. So. Mr. Wellahan?
Thank you. Yeah, I know there's a ceremony for Memorial Day on Monday, May 26th. I'm not sure whether there's going to be a formal invitation from the mayor's office. Usually that happens. I just read it in the paper. I'm not sure what time it starts. I don't know if the mayor has a starting time. Usually it's like around 11 o'clock or so. So everyone's
10 a.m.
How long?
10.
10 o'clock.
Doors
10
open at
o'clock.
10.
10 o'clock. Okay, so everyone's invited to show up, and I usually save a couple donuts for Mr. Collmore.
Any other announcements? Okay. Moving on. I will now entertain a motion to enter executive session for the purposes of collective bargaining with the Holyoke Teachers Association, because an open meeting will cause a detrimental effect to our bargaining position, and not to return to open session. Moved
Second.
by Mr. Zaza, seconded by Ms. Wilson. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Dr. Rivera Colon,
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Ms. LaFave,
Yes.
Tenzie Williams.
See.
In executive session, roll call, please. We can do the roll call and take a recess.
Mayor Garcia,
Yes.
Dr. Rivera Colon,
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan,
Present.
Ms. LaFave, Ms. Tenzie Williams,
Aquí.
Mr. Izaza,
Present.
Mr. Willahan,
Here.
Mr. Collmore,
Yes.
and Ms. Wilson.
Present.
It is currently 8:20. We will take a brief recess until 8:24.